All right, all right. Hello, everybody. I am CheeseSlice, and today, if you can see, it's a new year, so we're taking a little bit new approach. Gloria Guillo is going to be hosting the show now instead of sitting in for Pasta, but Pasta is still very happy to have us present the show on his channel. So, thank you for watching. And what we are watching today is a live recording of two segments that are going to be put on WBAI and the Progressive Radio Network. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our host, Gloria Guillo, and the professor, Jayme Kuzmarov. How you guys doing today?
Great.
All right. Are we ready to jump into this recording?
Thanks, Jayme. We're ready.
Let's, I'm not ready. Hold on. I got one more thing I got to do. I got to get up the clock. Then I'll I'll jump out, let you guys run, and we will get this thing put in the books. All right. I'm ready. I'm going to cut out. Gloria, take it away.
All right. Let me make sure my phone is off. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Left on Left, where the left critiques itself and laughs out loud to keep from crying. I'm Gloria Guillo, administrator, former administrator in New York City government, an investigative journalist, vice chair at WBAI Radio, and a co-founder of Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement, a group so left, it's right on. I'm joined here today by a resident expert, Jayme Kuzmarov. Jayme is a professor at Tulsa Community College, a historian, investigative journalist, and managing editor of Covert Action Magazine, an online magazine that focuses on CIA and deep state activity. Our producer and engineer is Jayme CheeseSlice. The opinions you hear represent our own and not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. Our topic for today is MK Ultra. What do the newly released declassified documents on the CIA's brainwashing program say? And we have actually a two-part series, which is MK Ultra. Was it really ever discontinued? Are Manchurian candidates involved in today's assassinations and mass casualty events? We're going to start off with Professor Kuzmarov's most recent article, which is in Covert Action Magazine. It's CIA Cold War Mind Control Experiments Shattered the Minds of Countless Unwitting Victims. And it's by Jayme Kuzmarov, and it's not yet published. It's going to be published soon. Jayme, tell us when your article is going to be published and a little bit about it. Thank you.
Well, this article may be published next month. It's based on the review of release of new documents that were published on the National Security Archive website, which is based at George Washington University. And they lobby the government for, they sue and lobby for the release of new documents. And these documents, provide a good picture. I mean, there are already important studies published of Operation MK Ultra. Particularly, there was a path-breaking book that was published in the late 1970s by Jonathan Marks called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate. And this followed in the wake of the Church Committee disclosures and the shutdown of Operation MK Ultra in the mid-1970s. And this was a notorious program where the CIA was experimenting with new mind control techniques. They were obsessed. They they believed that the Russians and Chinese had developed brainwashing techniques in interrogation, and they were under the illusion that American POWs in the Korean War, there were about a dozen or more American POW defected to China. Most were actually African Americans who didn't want to return to the Jim Crow South, or they saw, they were kind of, enthusiastic about or excited to learn more about China, so they stayed in China. But the CIA and other than the National Security Establishment were convinced that they had been brainwashed, that the Chinese had these secret techniques for turning them. And there were also 21 POWs who admitted to germ warfare during the Korean War, which now we know for sure that the U.S. actually carried out germ warfare and that they were telling the truth. But this was actually part of a CIA disinformation operation to make it seem like they had been brainwashed and been subjected to mind control under interrogation by the Chinese communists. So this was the kind of justification for the Operation MK Ultra, that the U.S. had to outdo the Chinese, and that the Chinese and Russians had developed techniques for brainwashing and interrogation, and turning, and creating defectors in the Cold War. So the CIA ramped up its experiments, which I think had started right at the end of World War II, and involved the recruitment of Nazi scientists. The Nazis had some really dark
Jeremy.
things going on where they were doing this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just, in all my research, and I'm curious if this is your research too, every time I see the words national security, fight communism, save democracy, these to me have been empty words. These are words that are just really a justification. I don't believe them. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, this is just the way they justify. Like I was saying, they claim that the Chinese were doing this, so we have to do it. But actually, there was no evidence that the Chinese were doing it. The Chinese did promote. I've studied. There are a number of books about the experiences of American prisoners of war in the Korean War, and they did say that the Chinese did promote political education in the prison camps, but there was nothing about mind control. So it was a complete fabrication. In fact, there was a book by Edward Hunter, who was a CIA operative and disinformation specialist, and he was the one to make these allegations. He reported in this book about alleged brainwashing that the Chinese had carried out. But it was a CIA disinformation book to create the illusion among the American public that the Chinese, and it played off, I think, racist stereotypes of the Chinese, that they're these cunning people that could somehow manipulate good, innocent Americans who had come to bomb North Korea back to the Stone Age, and try and overthrow the Chinese revolution, which was a historic revolution to overthrow, tyranny in their country, and neo-colonialism, and overcome their backwardness. So yeah, it was just a fantasy promoted by the CIA, but this information specialist. But that's how the public understood it, and that's, again, yeah, I agree with you. That's how it was rationalized, and these were very sadistic experiments that drew off Nazi techniques, where they were carrying out, experiments with drugs on unwitting suspects, and like a lot of these new documents, that's one of the chilling part of it, is there a lot of reference to unwitting unwitting victims, that these are people who are maybe in hospital for mental health treatment, or prisoners. A lot of it was on prisoners, and one of the documents deals with Atlanta, where there was a big experiment with LSD on prisoners in Atlanta, and they were just pumping them with drugs, and they were not being forthcoming about what they were being given, and many of these prisoners went insane. And this is totally medically unethical. It's a violation of the Hippocratic Oath to experiment on unwitting patients. Often they were African Americans, so it follows a very dubious tradition in American history, where African Americans are used as guinea pigs for unethical medical testing, and often it drove people insane. And one person who wrote about it was James Whitey Bulger, the notorious gangster. He was in the Atlanta penitentiary in the 50s when these experiments were being carried out. And one of the documents deals with a Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, who had, oversaw the experiments in the Atlanta penitentiary. And he was the head of a major science program at Emory University, a very distinguished liberal arts college in Atlanta. And you see how the distinguished scientists and academics and universities were involved in these sadistic experiments. And Balder said he was given LSD pumped with very high doses for like, I don't know how many days, at least 50 days in a row, maybe more than 100 days. And he said it drove him insane, that he had to sleep with the lights on for the rest of his life. And he was mentally damaged from that time forward. He wrote a diary about it. And he was horrified to learn what these experiments were all about when he finally learned about it years later. Yeah, I mean, again, this is just totally unethical, And I don't know what they're trying to find out by pumping a guy with LSD for 100 days, huge doses, but that's going to mess up with somebody's brain waves. And this is the kind of thing they were doing. And they were doing all of these documents. For instance, some deal with George White was this Federal Bureau of Narcotics officer, and he set up these safe houses where he would recruit prostitutes to entice people. And it seems they would actually use hypnosis and techniques to get women, like basically getting women into sex slavery by hypnotizing them, and using these MK Ultra experiments. And they would lure men into the safe house, and these men would be subjected to these experiments where they're pumping them with drugs. And they're also experimenting on techniques like we see now in the War on Terror, like how would people react to being isolated for 4 days, or hooding, or messing with their sleeping pattern, or things like that. And that's used now as techniques of interrogation and torture in the War on Terror. They were experimenting with those kind of techniques, and they would lure people into these safe houses, usually using women who had been hypnotized, and basically sold into sex slavery. And the CIA was actually funding this project. And one of the key figures was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. His name comes up in a lot of these documents. And he was known as his own lawyer, when he met him, said, "I met the CIA's Dr. Death." And another thing Gottlieb did was to hunt the earth for poisonous plants. He would send agents to search for poisonous plants so that they can poison people. And they were doing experiment, like Gottlieb directly participated in interrogations with Russian POWs and some I think Nazis after World War II who were part of the paperclip operation, but they kept them in captivity, and they did these experiments on them, and then they would kill some of them after, because they had messed with them so badly, and these people were so badly damaged, or they could testify about the horrors that they had endured. They had to execute them, and that's one other reason Gottlieb was known as Dr. Death.
And also the poisoner in chief. I just think it's worth noting a few things. Some of the techniques that were used are ultrasonic noise, radiation, temperature extremes, electroshock, hooding, sensory deprivation, stress positions, cramping, and the goal, which is that you can deconstruct the personality. This is all to deconstruct the personality. So you wonder, why are we deconstructing personalities? Why are we doing this mind control? What do we want to achieve with this? And we'll in our next show kind of go into the victims of this mind control. And as Jayme was saying, yes, some of them become sex slaves. And it's not only through this, I forgot the word I'm looking for. Where you, I forgot. Well, anyway, it's also through this pain and torture that you deconstruct the personality, not just by hypnosis is the word I was looking for. It's not just by hypnosis, but it's also through pain and suffering. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a dissociative personality disorder. And that once you create this fragmented personality, then you're able to program this person to do what you want. And that's how you get the sex slave. And it's also how you may get the Manchurian candidate. And, Jayme talks quite a lot about these, alleged Manchurian candidates. And there's really a whole list of them, from Oswald to, I don't know. I have a whole list of all of these different Manchurian candidates.
Sirhan. Yeah, and one thing I want to mention is that Gottlieb hired a famous magician named John Mulholland to instruct CIA agents participating in these programs on how they could effectively slip drugs and Mulholland, into somebody's drink or poisons. And the key Mulholland said was to distract their attention. It's not to go move quickly by the hand; it's to distract their attention. So this is the kind of thing they were doing. The CIA is actually hiring this magician to instruct them how to carry out these sinister experiment where they would slip something. And yeah, they're trying ultimately to control people, whether it's a prisoner of war. They want him to spill all the secrets, and be kind of obedient to everything they say. In other cases, they may be trying to groom assassins. And as far-fetched as it sounds, we know for a fact that this took place, like with Sirhan and Mark Chapman in the Lennon assassination. Sirhan was taken in by some of these MK Ultra scientists, and he would basically program, and there was a command, and it was at the Ambassador Hotel where Robert Kennedy was speaking. The command was this woman with the polka dot dress. Once he saw her, and that's how hypnotists work. Once he saw a woman with a polka dot dress, that's when he went into this kind of trance and was instructed exactly what to do. And he shot blanks. The real assassin, he was set up as the patsy in that murder. The real assassin, Thane Eugene Cesar, who's been identified as a employee of Lockheed Martin and a branch that worked with the CIA, shot Kennedy from behind the ear. But Sirhan was the patsy. And Mark David Chapman was the patsy in the shooting of John Lennon, and they told him exactly what to do. And yeah, usually there's certain triggers for this person. So they actually played out these experiments and did groom assassins, and they used hypnosis. And there were these CIA scientists who worked under MK Ultra, and many were very distinguished in their field and very well respected in society, working out of top universities. And of course, we could discuss the case of Ewan Cameron and the sadistic experiments that went on in McGill University, which is my alma mater, at the Allen Memorial Institute of Psychiatry. Ewan Cameron received a lot of CIA money, and they did all kinds of experiments like you were describing, sensory deprivation, all kinds of cruel things went on there.
Electroshock therapy was very popular there, and sleep and inducing like a coma for months at a time. It was pretty cruel. One of the things that you brought out in your article, and I've also discovered in this, is, and it's really quite chilling, how many universities and their psychology or psychiatric departments are involved with the CIA. And something that you bring up, and these are our words for today: patsy, cutout, plausible deniability, and also in this sense, informed consent, which was lacking in all of this, which is in violation of the Nuremberg Code and many other things. The unwitting subject, someone who has no idea that they're part of an experiment, which is, illegal, and internationally it's wrong. And then also the concept of the patsy, someone who is thrust in a role and charged with doing something, but is really not guilty. They're just kind of positioned there. And then the big one is impunity. And when Jeremy's article, you read Jeremy's whole wonderful article, you get to the point of impunity. None of these people were punished in any way, shape, or form. And it's come out in many documents that a lot of these people were just sadomasochists, and they really enjoyed power and torture. And, that's why they rose to the top of their field. Jeremy, could you talk a little bit about the different universities that are involved? I mean, I think Stanford was involved, McGill, which was your alma mater, Yale is involved, Harvard is involved. I mean, it's just
the documents. Yeah, well, Emory University was involved with this doctor. Now I forgot his name. I mentioned
Pfeiffer.
Yeah, and he was very big, I think, in the diagnosis of schizophrenia, and so yeah, he headed these major experiments on prisoners in Atlanta. There's the case of Dr. Harris Isbell, who took up a distinguished position at the University of Kentucky, and he was running this narcotics farm in Kentucky, and they carried out huge experiments on African Americans there involving LSD, and that's in some of these documents, including like Gottlieb had a document where he talked about how they tested 77 days. I remember one of the documents, 77 days in a row, LSD. And these are like marginal African Americans who are kind of marginal, and they were sent to this treatment center. They're supposed to be sent to a treatment center to get off drugs, and yet they're pumping with drugs as part of this sadistic experiment. And many were ruined for life. The son of one of the victims wrote about his father was actually a politician who was well known, but got into drugs and was sent, got an addiction problem, so was sent to this treatment facility, and his life was ruined after that. He was turned into like a shell of a human being, he said, because of these experiments. And there was, Val Orlikov was the wife of a Winnipeg member of parliament with the New Democratic Party, and she was a victim of Ewan Cameron and these experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute, McGill, and she there was a major lawsuit, and that's one of the documents, because Gottlieb was forced to testify. This was in the 80s at a deposition, and he admitted to things like, I think he referred to it as like psychosurgery, and that they're trying to program her brain, and that she was subject to all kinds of terrible things, and she couldn't function as a human being. She couldn't sleep properly. She was terrified in the night, and she couldn't read books anymore. And anyway, it just affected these patients in terrible, terrible ways. Some were driven to suicide. So it's really human cruelty. And these are people who may have gone in for some, like one guy, the case of Herbert Blauer, was a professional tennis player who went through a divorce and wanted to see a therapist or something. He was just having some life problems after his divorce. And then he got subjected to a torture regimen, and he ultimately committed suicide. So some of them were, highly functional human beings and just turned into like human vegetables. So it's really horrible. And as you point out, Gottlieb would never faced any punishment whatsoever. And of course, there's the case of Dr. Frank Olson, who was involved with these experiments but threatened to become a whistleblower. He developed a conscience.
Wait, I just want to interject one thing. One thing that your article brought out is that Gottlieb wasn't just the poisoner in chief, but he was part of the bioweapons program. And it's very possible that Olson knew things in the bioweapons program and wanted to be a whistleblower about things that were going on. So
correct. Well, Olson and Gottlieb were both involved with MK Ultra as well as the bioweapons program, and it's now documented. The CIA admitted. There's a new book I can recommend by Thomas Powell, and there's documents that he cites in the book that show that the CIA has admitted that they carried out biowarfare in Korea during the Korean War, even though they long denied it. And they tried to smear those pilots who confessed. So Olson was intricately involved with Gottlieb in that. And then, Olson threatened to become a whistleblower, and he was murdered. The evidence has come to light that he was beaten over the head and then thrown out of a hotel window, 10th floor. And then they tried to make it look like a suicide, but he couldn't have crashed through the hotel. He would have had to have a running start, and it was a tiny room. And he actually had no glass in his head. There was a autopsy that was done years later, because originally it was all covered up. But when the son ordered the real autopsy, there was no glass in him, so he couldn't have jumped out the window through the glass. There was no glass in his head, and it showed he was beaten to death. And that was the CIA published an assassination.
Right, I've read it. It actually tells you how to kill someone, by you give them a blunt force trauma to the head, and then throw them out the window.
Throw them out the window and make it look like he committed suicide.
It's in the manual.
Yeah, but in this case, it's impossible because the glass was too thick. You would have to have run through the entire hotel, and this was a tiny room. So, these guys, they were involved in some horrible things, in the name of national security, and they had to kill people because this was all kept secret. This only came out in the church in 1975 with a church committee hearing around that time. But somehow they were able to escape prosecution. Yeah, because what they did was not simply totally unethical, but actually, criminal, and they should have been prosecuted. But this is the danger we see of using national. They use the term national security to justify some of the most heinous crimes ever known to man, whether it's bombing other countries or torturing people or carrying out these sadistic experiments on unwitting Americans. So I would agree with your premise. Be careful when somebody invokes national security.
Or they want to fight communism, or they want to save democracy. Put your, disbelief up there.
Yeah. And a lot of these people are sadomasochists, like Gottlieb. He had this veneer of respectability. He was highly intelligent with a PhD in biochemistry, but he fits the mold of a Mengele type, or Dr. Shiro Ishii, who developed the Japanese germ warfare program in World War II, where they carried out sadistic experiments on Chinese. So
the other thing, I just want to say this because I think would be remiss in not saying this. A lot of this justification and a lot of what they're doing is the same thing that happens in prisoner of war camps, such as Gitmo. And, they consider
we've got to wrap it up. But yeah, I would agree.
Well, just hold for 1 second. They've perfected these techniques. And our good friend, John Kiriakou, has really spoken out on torture programs. And he has explained that you don't get reliable information from people who are brainwashed or tortured, that the end does not justify the means. You don't get accurate information from these people. And so I just want to make sure that that's out there.
And even Gottlieb, if you read those documents, even Gottlieb and Stephen Kinzer's biography of Gottlieb, even he admitted to that all these sadistic things, and they didn't get good intelligence out of it.
Okay, I think that's it for us, right? Are we down to the last couple of minutes? All right, so that wraps up our show for today. This is Left on Left. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined by Professor Jayme Kuzmarov. Remember to like, donate, and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next week.
I'll be back in 1 sec.
All right. Okay. So I changed the card, as you can see. So I put this up there.
Wrap it up.
Because the 20 seconds was kind of too specific, and it's always, we got to be fluid. So when you see this, it's like, finish your thought, do the outro.
Okay.
So let's see. I got to reset the clock. We got Jayme coming back. Hopefully back soon. So this MK Ultra stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's a real program, but it's hard to believe that I find it hard to believe that it actually works in terms of mind control, but
it works like a charm. I mean, if you torture someone physically, mentally,
it sounds like
it deconstructs the personality. No, it deconstructs the personality. It causes dissociative disorders. I mean, they have studied this.
Yeah, it's hard for me to believe. I think though it only works on a certain percentage of the population though.
Oh, no. If you do sensory deprivation, put hoods on people, loud noises, lack of human contact. I mean,
well, that can drive someone crazy, sure, but I don't know if it.
But when you drive someone crazy, that's when they become vulnerable to programming. It's this breaking down of the personality.
But a certain percentage of the population is just going to be always resistance to the programming. They're just not going to cave.
It works, or the people commit suicide. I mean, it's either they comply and or they commit suicide. The whole goal is the destruction of the personality.
Well, the people who commit suicide, I'd say it didn't work then. It failed. So,
well, yeah, you could say that. Yes, I'd say in some cases, yeah, people just kill themselves. They can't live with it. So in that case, I concur. It worked.
Yeah, it's still hard to believe. It does sound like woo-woo stuff to me, but
it's very well documented.
Program.
It's very well
I know it's well programmed. It's a real program, and they've tried a lot of stuff, but it's still. it's still hard for me to believe that people actually can be controlled to do the stuff. I've listened to everybody talk about this stuff for quite some time now, and it's
I've actually met people that have
survived it.
survived it. Yeah, I've met people who are in MK Ultra and in satanic cults.
Yeah. Well, I know is it basically the same thing as like being in a cult?
Well, Jeremy's going to talk a little bit about that because that in our next episode, because what happened is they basically shut down a lot of this in the 70s with the Church Commission, and what happened is they went underground. Okay.
Yeah.
So someone like Gottlieb, okay, all right, he's not doing it, but he had proteges, so they're doing it.
Mhm.
And someone like Ewan Cameron in McGill isn't doing it, but he has proteges, and the proteges are doing it. But they have to change how it manifests. So it's not being done, let's say, in a whorehouse, with unwitting Johns. Now it's being done through religious cults. And Jeremy's done a lot of research on religious cults, and he's got a lot to tell us. And I hope he tells us in the next episode.
Right. That last thing I'll say is it certainly sounds like they could have shut down the MK Ultra plan, but a project, but the new project popped up in its place. They're still doing it, but under a different name, and we might not know what that is today.
Well, when we just a little bit of the prequel, when we look at what goes on today in the news, okay, we apply what we know from declassified briefs and prior things, and then we kind of extrapolate and look at these new things and compare them to what we have in the past. So, for example, if someone has a history in the military and they've been at Fort Bragg, we go, that's interesting. If someone has been in psychiatric treatment for prolonged periods of time and taken antidepressants and other substances that we know dull feelings and dull compassion and increase the probability of anger and violence, we go, is this something? If that person does an act that has a chilling effect on the public, and then that act results in changes to, let's say, gun control laws, or changes into freedom of speech, or changes into freedom of movement, and accomplishes an agenda, then we go, what is that? So we do a lot of looking at the history. And one of the things that Jeremy is like really phenomenal at is this accurate historical analysis, where he doesn't believe anything unless he sees the declassified briefs. And I think that it is like just an amazing, thing about Jeremy. And I tend to look at what's going on and how do these past actions affect what's going on now? And then we kind of put them together. And I think that's one of the things that makes our chemistry real well, with LOL, and also our friendship and Covert Action Magazine, that we kind of combine these views and discuss them. So, we have some very interesting stuff coming up, because there's been a lot of events from people, the mass casualty events and spectacular events that have really grabbed the consciousness of the American public and even the world public. People talk about these things, and when we look at them, we do see parallels to prior military service, being at Fort Bragg, being at the junior ROTC, having psychiatric medications. So there we go.
All right. Well, let's get the show
on the
moving.
road.
We'll go on to the second segment here. I'm going to drop out, and Gloria, you start whenever you're ready. 24 minutes. Let's go. Let's do it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Left on Left, where the left critiques itself and laughs out loud to keep from crying. I'm Gloria Guillo, former administrator in New York City government, an investigative journalist, vice chair at WBAI Radio, and a co-founder of Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement, a group so left it's right on. I'm joined here today by a resident expert, Jayme Kuzmarov. Jayme is a professor at Tulsa Community College, a historian, investigative journalist, and managing editor of Covert Action Magazine, an online magazine that focuses on CIA and deep state activity. Our producer and engineer is Jayme CheeseSlice. The opinions you hear represent our own and are not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. Our topic for today is really part 2 in our series on MK Ultra. Part 1 was on newly released declassified documents on the CIA's brainwashing program, and this section is on MK Ultra. Was it really ever discontinued? Are Manchurian candidates involved in today's assassinations and mass casualty events? And let's take it to Jayme, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and talk about it. Jayme.
Okay, well, yeah, MK Ultra was officially terminated in the mid 1970s after its exposure, and the Church Committee hearing led by Frank Church exposed that program as well as a lot of nefarious CIA activity. So officially, it was dissolved, and Gottlieb, retired from the CIA, and he tried, Sidney Gottlieb was the CIA Dr. Death, who headed the Operation MK Ultra, the nefarious mind control experiments that involved testing drugs on unwitting subjects and other efforts to try and develop techniques for brainwashing and controlling human behavior. Now, yeah, it's believed Richard Offshee was a professor at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, and he did a study, and he found that MK Ultra was continued under religious cults, that it formally ended, but informally it continued. And I did a study of the Jonestown massacre. That was a famous massacre in 1978 in Guyana. Jonestown was the People's Temple Church, set up by the People's Temple Church, which had been founded by the Reverend Jim Jones. And it was a church that promoted interracial harmony and brought together African Americans and whites. And it supposedly was a very progressive church that had moved to San Francisco and attracted a lot of elements of the counterculture who were looking for some religion in their life, but who were against the Vietnam War and other U.S. wars, and were kind of humanists. But it was very Jones was really a con man. There's strong evidence that the church had started in Indiana in the 1950s. And Jones may have been an FBI informant at that time, and he may have actually deliberately set up attacks to make it look like his church was attacked by the Klan, to make like he was this savior, or champion of racial justice who was being targeted by the Klan. But he set that all up, and he was really a con man. And then he worked in Brazil and various South American countries in the 1960s. And there's strong evidence that he worked for the CIA undercover, a religious preacher, and that he was fomenting a race conflict in Guyana because he was in Brazil, and he was stirring up riots there against the left-wing government that the CIA wanted to overthrow and succeeded in doing in 1964, Raul Goulart. And then in Guyana, there was an Indian, after Guyana gained its independence from the British, they were run. The leader was named Cheddi Jagan, who was an Indian, and he was a socialist and a leftist, and he was going to nationalize the resources. They had bauxite in Guyana, and the U.S. had military bases they wanted to set up there, but he was a leftist and he didn't want that. So they supported the Afro-Guyanese population and a corrupt politician named Forbes Burnham. And Jones used.
I just want to take. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to take a step
I'm
back.
going to get into how Jones. So Jones has a background in the CIA. So then, when he set up Jonestown, after the coup, brought in Forbes Burnham as the leader of Guyana, who was favorable to U.S. interests in the country. And he allowed Jones to purchase this land and set up Jonestown, where he brought members of his religious cult to work the land. And supposedly this kind of hippie commune where they can play out their value system and develop the land in a poor country, and develop sustainable agriculture. But there was a sinister aspect, because and then ultimately he got his followers to commit suicide, allegedly. But actually, there's evidence that the majority who were killed were actually murdered, and then all these dark things were uncovered. That, like, as a cult, like, to punish people, they would put them in sensory deprivation, and they had these doctors working with them who would carry out these MK Ultra type experiments, and they found all kinds of drugs that had been used in MK Ultra after the murders, including Thorazine and other drugs. So that's why researchers suspect that Jonestown was used as a cover for the continuation of MK Ultra. And I mean, cults itself practice a form of mind control and brainwashing of their followers.
I just wanted to jump in with
go ahead.
something you said that I think just really needs to come out. Is very often the CIA does these race wars and makes race and the division of groups from each other. So instead of us seeing ourselves as part of a class, we look at each other as oppression Olympics. Oh, this is women. This is this type of suffering. This is Black women. This is another type of suffering. This is trans women. This is another type of suffering. Instead of us all looking at ourselves as the oppressed class and the oppressors as the predator class. So when you say this was also at a time not too far before it, where we had Charlie Manson. And Charlie Manson's whole thing was all of this hippy dippy stuff was to incite a race war. And that was a big element. And many people also believe that these hippie cults and these LSD cults and all of that were also from the CIA. So I just wanted to tie in that concept because it's very important. I mean, they come to us and they know how to deal with us as liberals. They go, oh, okay, well, they're liberals. They're going to really care about different races. They have, their heartstrings or for different races. So they use those narratives to get at us and to say, okay, well, we're going to, help this group. So we join it and we say, hey, this is wonderful. We're going to help this group, when actually we're just being manipulated. So anytime there's any real focus on isolating different groups, identity groups, just think this could be a psyop. You could be being played. So just be careful. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Jeremy.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, and then that's a side point to MK Ultra, but you can look at what they were doing in developing world country to divide the population, like in Guyana, to divide and pit the Indian and Black populations against each other, so they wouldn't unify together under a leftist leader like Cheddi Jagan, who was promoting very progressive, domestic economic program and progressive foreign policy, and trying to limit the U.S. influence and ability of U.S. corporation to exploit their economy, and for the U.S. to set up military bases on their land. So, and what they did in Guyana, the CIA, and Jones played a key role because he stirred up race riots, and he used his stature as a religious figure to get his followers to carry out destructive acts. And that's the kind of formula they apply in the United States, because they don't want an interracial movement of the poor, working and middle class to march for more left-wing progressive policies, as Martin Luther King was trying to mobilize people. And you see that with the George Floyd riots and today's politics, and how they try and divide people over race. So I would agree with your point, and we can do other shows about that. But that's why, the Jonestown was perfect for MK Ultra, because Jones was a CIA asset, and he was a master manipulator himself. And these kind of people who are running MK Ultra, like Sidney Gottlieb, was a master manipulator. Like, even when the Olsen children came to visit him, to try and uncover the truth about what happened to their father, he was able to manipulate them. So that's why they pick these cult leaders, because they're masters at that, and they get people to do things they wouldn't never do otherwise. And the people become almost like hypnotized, so they can carry out these tests and continue what they had been doing under MK Ultra in the 50s, to do it under these cults. So,
Well, I mean, I think that people like Gottlieb are psychopaths. I mean, they are just pure evil. They have absolutely no compunction of what they're doing. They feel that they're above any kind of censure, and it's terrifying that this is what rises to the top, is this psychopathic personality type, and the ability to, and as you brought out in your article, this impunity, that nothing ever happens to him, and then people are like, oh, he was a great guy. He did a good job. It's they should be in prison, but they're not. So that's pretty horrible. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the news recently, okay, that we don't know. Jeremy and I don't know if these are MK Ultra victims, if they just have the same symptoms or the same profile as Sirhan or some of the other ones in history that we're pretty convinced were MK Ultra targets. I mean, recently we've had two events in New Orleans and in Las Vegas, and it just so happens they were done by people who came from the same Fort Bragg. We also have the Luigi situation, Luigi Mangione, who really idolized Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. And then when we studied Ted Kaczynski, we know that he was a victim of an MK Ultra program at Harvard. And when we study what was done to him, it's all the same. It's the same techniques. It's this concept of humiliation. It's this concept of deprivation. It's pretty horrific. And so we wonder if these things are really some MK Ultra things. And Jeremy's done a lot of research on the assassination of John Lennon, and you could talk a little bit about that too, which was this guy Mark David Chapman was in Hawaii and in a facility. We also find a lot of these people had a long amount of time either for like medical reasons or psychiatric reasons. We also find that many of these people who cause mass casualty events were in some kind of psychiatric program, or on certain psychiatric medications, or coming off them. So there's a lot of parallels that we tend to see and we look for. And just one thing that's really curious, and I actually find this really wonderful, is I don't think Jeremy spends as much time on social media as I do. He's a historian and he's really reading phenomenal books, and he's more intellectual. But I'm on social media, and what's really amazing is how many people don't believe prevailing narratives. And there's so many people researching the Luigi Mangione thing that it's just incredible. And so many things have come up that, like, it's just amazing. Like the fact that the eyebrows don't match. So, people are saying that he's a patsy. And there's a whole bunch of other things, that would make him a patsy. His relationship to his family, and also Nancy Pelosi and the healthcare industry. It's some of these things are just too coincidental. But we don't have any hard evidence. But some things you just say, hey, what's going on here?
Well, if there is a pattern, and that's one thing you can trace, historical pattern, where they are being, created. These, trained assassins are being created, and I mean there is a strategy. There's a strategy of tension that I think is unrecognized by a lot of people. but that this is actually a deliberate strategy of the governing elite. And we like to think of ourselves as a democracy, but actually, yeah, you can compare again, like CIA practices in a country like Guyana with what they're doing in the United States. And there's a prevailing strategy of tension, is that they want to create spectacular incidents and spectacular acts of violence, because that puts the public on edge, and that the public is willing to sign away civil liberties and to support draconian, whether it be anti-terrorism legislation or legislation to escalate funding for the police and for the military industrial complex, or for more militarized police. Because when you have these incidents, mass shootings, or mass killings, then the public will wants a better police presence. So that would be the motive. I mean, there is a motive behind the madness. And yeah, when you start to look into the background of these kind of people who are involved in these incidents, there are red flags that point out at you. Yeah, they have these military backgrounds, or they have, like, why would a guy from an elite family throw his life away unless he was, manipulated? And we know in the case of Mangione that he had back problems, and that he was seeing doctors. I don't know if he was seeing psychiatrists, so he could, I mean, I don't know in that case specifically, but if there is a pattern,
I've seen
and there are all
X-rays.
these weird things people are noticing, then your suspicion is heightened. And I think it's good. It showed the failing of the media. The media just is so bought off, and people don't trust the media because they don't investigate these things, and they just kind of ridicule people who think something is amiss here, and who start to pursue certain leads or point out certain oddities or patterns, and then they call those people conspiracy theorists. In fact, that's a form of brainwashing of society. The CIA uses psychological warfare on the entire society, and they use these gatekeepers in the media to try and set respectable opinion. And that's almost what they're doing in MK Ultra. They're trying to condition people to think certain ways, and program them in certain ways. And they do that in mass society, including through their control of the media and academia, and the way these topics are approached. So I hope more and more people will break through and expose the people who are doing this mind control and psi warfare, because they're the evil ones. Human curiosity is part of our nature. It's part of our nature to be skeptical or curious when you start to see some funny things, whether this Mangione case or other incidents. I mean, it's human nature. You notice something's strange here. I'm going to try and find out more about that. That's good, and that's what journalists should be doing. They don't, because this whole system's corrupt. So,
well, let's just talk just a little bit about Kaczynski. Kaczynski killed 3 Americans and injured nearly 24 more in a 17-year bombing spree. He pleaded guilty to murder and other charges in 1996 and died in prison in 2023. He was a victim of experiments by Dr. Henry Murray. And Dr. Henry Murray was focused on deconstructing personality through humiliation and psychological stress. And he was with them since he was 16 years old. And it's pretty horrific what they did to this 16-year-old. And he was really tortured by it. So it's very interesting that, in particular, Luigi Mangione wrote a very positive, I think he gave him a 4 or 5-star review for his book. And Kaczynski's book, let's see, I don't think I have, okay, yeah. The book was called, Unabomb was called Industrial Society and Its Future. And this book review was on Goodreads. And he said, Mangione said, it's easy to dismiss the Unabomber as a madman, but that he had raised important issues about society. And then we find out that Mangione's grandfather was a friend of the Pelosi family. So it's really some of these things tie together, and it's really quite interesting. And so when I started to research Luigi Mangione, and I found his admiration for the Unabomber, who I knew Ted Kaczynski was in this program since he was 16 at Harvard. I was, hey, that's intense. And just the one thing I wanted to say is, he didn't only have back problems; he had like a series of pins in his spine. And this is a young man with, like, I don't know, I think it was like 4 or 5 pins in his spine. So he might not have been in a prison, or he might not have been in a mental hospital, but he certainly was in a hospital for quite a long period of time. And one thing that Jayme does bring up in his article is this concept of cutouts. And very often the cutouts are hospitals. And in his article, he talks about a couple of hospitals. I think Georgetown Hospital, Jayme?
Well, there was one in California, and I have a forthcoming article on the Symbionese Liberation Army, where they actually took a guy from a prison and they put him in a mental facility, and they kind of brainwashed him to become a cult leader of this left-wing group that started carrying out destructive acts, whose purpose was to discredit the Bay Area left, which threatened the establishment because the growing strong left-wing movement. And this was Donald DeFreeze, and this was the Vacaville facility in Northern California. And Jones had also been involved with that facility at one time, I believe that one. So that's one. But yeah, there were a lot of the universities were involved. It shows the corruption of a lot of the universities. Georgetown was a key one. Harvard was another. So this Henry Murray, and they're testing like unwitting students. I don't know how he got. In some cases, it may have been students who were trying to make a little extra money, or students maybe who went to see a counselor, and instead they get put in these kind of sadistic experiments. And some of these professors, they're so widely respected in society, but they are these ghouls in reality. And there are many universities. University of Oklahoma was one, and Dr. Julian West was a key figure who was connected with Sirhan Sirhan, as well as Mark David Chapman and Timothy McVeigh, who was another patsy, and he was out of the University of Oklahoma for a long time. So that was one. There's many. There's Emory University was a key one. We now know from these new documents. So.
I was just looking for the name of the program, but in the case of your article, you talked about the concept of the cutout, and in that particular article, you were talking about Georgetown University Hospital. So very often hospitals are also involved in this. So someone could go for something like back surgery or shoulder surgery, where they have maybe a protracted recovery time. And at that point, they are really vulnerable to, different techniques that could be there.
I just want to mention, with the limited time we have, that there was a movement. The anti-psychiatry movement was a movement I think that people should look up. But I figured, like R.D. Laing, who cast critical attention in general on the psychiatric profession, and this, these documents really do cast critical attention on that profession, and how so many, distinguished psychiatrists were involved with this, and how they really had no regard for their subject. They looked down on them. They looked at them more just like human guinea pigs to be tested, rather than real human beings. And they're not really involved in helping them, and they don't have that element of human compassion. And that was a critique of R.D. Laing and other of the anti-psychiatrists of the 1950s and 60s. And they were against, in general, use of drugs and electroshock. And they saw a lot of mental illness as like social and the result of, inequality and injustice in society, and that the, governing institutions and official institutions were run in authoritarian ways, and drove people to engage in kind of what was characterized as antisocial behavior, but might actually be natural reaction to unjust laws and societal institutions. So I think there's a lot of insights there. And there's something, really dark and sinister with these projects and how they're used by the governing elite as part of the strategy of tension. So hopefully more people will become more aware of this, and we won't allow this to happen continuously.
And we're going to wrap it up, but I just want to name the three, main MK Ultra people that are, have come to light: Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, Sirhan Sirhan, Timothy McVeigh, Richard Jewell, and I can't say his name, Musaki Zacharias. And I also believe Nicholas Cruz, who was the child shooter in Florida. But another show on those things. So I guess we have to really wrap this up.
But yeah, there's one CIA doctor who's quoted, I think, in David Whalen's book, who said, give me 6 months and I'll turn them into an assassin. So they were kind of proud of it, that they could hypnotize and brainwash people. And another person was proud that he could get women to have sex with him through hypnosis as a form of date rape. And this was somebody who was working with the CIA, and MK Ultra was bragging about this. And they turned some women into prostitutes and sex slaves to lure men into these experiments. So that was really horrible what they did there. And again, it's sad that nobody was ever prosecuted for these criminal acts.
Impunity, word for today. Okay.
And impunity is what allows it to continue today, even if it is kept secret. We know that a lot of these mind control techniques were used in places like Guantanamo Bay and CIA prison camps. We know the CIA works with psychologists like Mitchell and Jessen is the most famous case that's known to the public, what they were doing in supporting torture in the war on terror. And the psychiatrists are still working with the CIA, and they get away with it until there's more oversight in government to investigate this, and until they're held accountable criminally for their actions, this will continue.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. This is Left on Left. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined here by Professor Jayme Kuzmarov. Remember to like, donate, and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next week.
Okay, good.
We could do 10 on these. This is one of our favorites. We also love Assassinations.
I know.
we both read the Assassination Manual for fun and shits and giggles.
All right. Well, I said earlier it's hard to believe. What I should have said, I'm more astonished that it works.
Yeah.
It's not that
I got to run.
Not that I deny it.
I got a lot of stuff to do. So
yeah. All right.
So Jayme, we're gonna go for. You guys can keep talking. So for next Thursday, I'm gonna head out. We're all set for 11 next Thursday.
Yeah.
For the Martin Luther King, and then 2 weeks we have a guest. So Gloria, you'll email Jayme in advance his email so he can send the link a couple days before.
Yeah, we'll get that set up. And so, but I think 11 o'clock Thursdays is our new time.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
This is the show moving forward. So,
and we also have a Green Renaissance meeting tonight, and Jayme's going to put how to get to it in the chat. And anyone who wants to chat with us on it, that would be great.
Okay, I'm signing off, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Jayme.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Jayme.
Yeah, thanks, Jayme.
All right. Well, earlier I said it's hard to believe. I didn't mean that I don't believe it. I'm not in denial. It's just that the MK Ultra works. It's just that I'm astonished that it works. It's like,
well, let me read to you some stuff.
I don't want to believe it works, but I do.
I'll stay on with you. Let's just talk about Kaczynski, what they did to him. Okay. Humiliation and attack of core beliefs. They make you write your sexual fantasies, and they make you write what you believe, how you believe the world is. And then they sit with you for months and insult and humiliate you about these things. And then after that, they make you watch videos of you being humiliated.
Hmm.
The name, just let me just get you the name of the program. Okay. The name of the program was Multiform Assessments of Personality Development Among Gifted College Men. The experiments were conducted on 22 Harvard undergraduates.
So
Okay.
what? So how are these people captured? Are they like in an institution where they can't like just say
No,
screw this, I'm
no.
out?
What happens is, very often, as Jeremy was saying, they may do something like this because they need the money. They get the money for it, or somebody says, "Oh, this will be good on your profile." You get to know people. There's lots of ways that you can induce someone to come into something, and
So
then
I
and
like
then
tell them it's like hey, you want to participate in this thing? We'll kick you some dollars to do the thing, and
yeah, I mean,
so it's voluntary.
well, it's not really purely volunteering because you're going to get something back from it, and then you also may get certain privileges. Now, it's really easy to do in the prison system because they'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Well,
well,
you
we'll
can't
cut
go
your
there.
time, or we'll give you more food, or we'll, take care of that medical condition you have. We'll get you a real doctor." I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to actually induce people in a prison system, but you know, I mean, the other thing is like someone like Kaczynski. He was 16. He didn't have the ability to have informed consent.
No.
He trusted these people. He believed that they were there, that they were, doctors, and they knew what they were doing, and this experiment was, legit. And it really wasn't. And when just for example, the person who did this, Dr. Henry Murrow, was chairman of Harvard University's Department of Social Relations. And he had developed a screening test for the Office of Strategic Services, which is the forerunner of the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's like, people are like, oh, well, there's really not a connection to the CIA and Kaczynski. His doctor was with the OSS. He was doing screening tests for them. Come on,
They're probably
it's
feeding the ones that they think are more susceptible to
yeah.
the agents.
And this was to assess the suitability of applicants to the Secret Service. It
Yeah.
tested an applicant's ability to withstand harsh interrogation. And these were 3-year experiments. So that's 3
Yeah.
years,
It
16,
takes a lot of
17, and
a long
18. That's
time.
a lot of this. And I forgot the name of the other one that I've studied a lot of on authoritarianism and the Milgram experiments. I've studied a lot on the Milgram experiments, and how are you familiar with the Milgram experiments?
No, that's actually something new to me. I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, all right. I'll just say it real quick for our listeners as well. The Milgram experiments were done to test people's sensitivity and compliance to authority. And basically, what they did is they had actors, and then they had subjects. And the actors would pretend that they were receiving electrical shocks, and the subjects were the people that were allegedly administering these electrical shocks. And there would be usually a person in a lab coat, so people would think this is an authority figure, blah blah. And they would say to the person, you have to continue shocking this person or you're going to ruin the experiment. You must do this. This
Yeah, I've
has to
seen that.
happen or you're going to blow the experiment. And
Mhm.
they would have this over their shoulder while they were administering this, pretend electric shock. But the chilling element is that they were delivering in their electric shock that could kill the person, and the person who's in the other room is like screaming in pain. And
Yeah.
and they continued. Most continued. I think the
Wasn't
ratio
like
was like
75% like
I
agreed.
yeah, not 75, a little less than that, but a very high percentage, a frighteningly high percentage, complied with authority.
Yeah, they'll
And
just do it if they trust in the authority figure, they'll just do whatever they're said.
well,
Um,
they found ways to resist, and that's really what I focused on: is how do you resist this? How do you free your mind, and how do we teach people to free their minds? And the things that we found out in this experiment is if there was consensus, if there was someone else in the room, let's say there were two doctors, and one of the doctors was saying, and they tried all kinds of scenarios. So they would have a scenario where one doctor would say, no, I think he's had enough. Maybe we shouldn't do it any longer. And the minute there was that
doubt,
alternate narrative, the test subject was able to kind of think more clearly and regain their humanity and their ability to perceive. So why the CIA and why our narratives are always cut, especially ours, especially left on left, because we don't look at things from a right left perspective. We look at truth. So we're not saying Donald Trump is the greatest or Joe Biden was the greatest. We're looking at just like what's happening, what's going on in the economy, what's going on in social services, what's happening, not the fluff. So when you do that and you push back against a prevailing narrative, they're afraid. So that's why we get so heavily censored, because our narrative allows people to think critically.
And then people who are naturally contrarians and skeptical are probably not going to be the kind of people they want in those programs, because they'll be like, this is going to be, even if you are successful, it's going to be really hard to sway that person.
Well, there's strength in unity. So if there's an alternate narrative out there, people are emboldened and they're strengthened. Yeah. And that's why we have our show. That's why we have our show.
Well, and that's why with cult members, they're not allowed to talk to people who don't believe, because it could break it. And anybody who's not on board with the message is got to be excommunicated. You can't associate with them, which is scary, because we saw a lot of that with the Democratic Party this last 4 years, probably even going a little bit further back than that. Not to say that we don't see it in other political spaces as well. It's just that it's not as strong there. Like when you talk to people or Trump supporters, they're more willing to talk to you and listen and have open discussions. But with the Democrat supporters, they're very closed down, and they don't want to hear anything that's outside of the approved discussion.
I think they've been more heavily propagandized for some reason in the last maybe 15 years. Because really, the people who are doing this, independent journalist research, which I find lovely and it's so inspiring. I mean, if you go on Twitter and you look at all the stuff on, Luigi Mangione, Patsy, and you put in some keywords, you get like this wealth of information of people on all of these deep dives. And
I'm glad you brought him back up, because that was the one thing I wanted to talk about. With Lee, I don't think he's MK Ultra, the Luigi thing. I think that's more of like mob connections, and like he's living his life, doing things normally, right? Blah blah blah. I'm just rich kid doing whatever I do. And then, but his family, it looks like they got some deep ties. They got ties to Pelosi. Pelosi has ties to mob or mafia, whatever it is. It might be one of those things where they came to the family and said, all right, you got to step up and do the thing. It's like, we've been taking care of you for all these years, and that's why you're living so well. Well, now it's time for you to do what you got to do. And he might have been selected to be, okay, you got to go do the thing.
Well, there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say he's a patsy. I mean, I really did look at a lot of eyebrows online. Everyone should look at the eyebrows.
Yeah, but
type in the eyebrows. No, they're not the same eyebrows. If you've ever had eyebrows done,
right? He could
no. If you've ever had your eyebrows done, you can spot an eyebrow. Okay, it's not the same eyebrows. You just it's impossible. It's impossible. So I mean the people who have done this research, I've even seen stuff where people created eyebrows and put it on the other one. The different shots, and it's all about the eyebrows. It's like the glove. If it doesn't fit, you must have quit.
Yeah, but his
but the eyebrows don't match.
He's got a similar smile from the
no, you can't really tell. The eyebrows don't match, and he's
in New York.
He pled not guilty. Okay, he
Well, I
pled
don't
not
blame him. That's
guilty.
what you got to do. You got to plead not guilty.
I don't know, but it's very possible he was shooting blanks, or he wasn't. He wasn't the one. He was. You know, if you really study the assassinations, I mean, and too bad Jeremy's not here for this, because Jeremy is Mr. Assassination. He
Yeah.
knows every assassination. He can recite it.
Yes, he
He's
does.
like, he's
He's a
amazing.
machine.
He's
He's a
amazing.
historian
We
machine.
love Jeremy.
Well,
So one of the things you find very often in these situations is you find doubles, body doubles. And if you really go into it, you will find body doubles. It's not unusual to have people dressed like a killer in another location. I mean, this happens all the time, and it's historically accurate.
yeah,
So if you want to do some, research, people who assassinate other people, and how the assassins had multiple body doubles.
right.
And
It's
people
still
that
weird
look
to
like
me.
them were in another country, or were in another city, or were in another part of the town.
It's still weird to me that when they caught him, he was basically had all the right evidence on him that
Yeah,
they needed to show that this was the guy. Or like, this was days later. Why is he wearing the same coat? Why is he
right.
carrying the stuff? It's like he wanted to be caught.
Well, people like with the Las Vegas incident, were really talking about this newscaster who has access to the guy's apartment, and they find like bomb making stuff, and
Oh yeah,
a Koran. I
that
mean, it
was
was like,
totally staged.
yeah, it looked like it was out of some set in Hollywood. I
Some
mean,
crappy like TV movie
it
thing.
yeah, exactly. It was just silly. But the part that I find heartwarming is that people have this disbelief now, and
Yeah,
people have really
more
stepped
so.
away from the mainstream media and the mainstream lies, and
Yeah,
are
so
now doing their own research, and are now saying, nah, that can't be. So this is really, they've pushed it so hard that there's
mhm,
blowback, and this
right.
blowback is very encouraging, because we used to be the only ones doing it. Now, we're a dime a dozen. So,
Yeah, well, that's good. It's everybody should be like that. Like, yeah, with like that story where they went into the guy's house, like
yeah,
it's
come on.
very it's the kind of thing that would have worked easily 20 years ago. But even now, like with normies, if they talk about it, you go, yeah, I watched that. That just didn't look real to me. That looked like it was fake. And then they say, well, some of the people who are still buying into it, you go, look, these people have lied to us about every since World War II, and arguably they lied to us about World War II, which probably is true. Um, why should we believe anything they're telling us? And also because of this last election cycle, people who were buying into it are kind of are kind of checking out,
But
because they were just they I mean, one of the biggest lies they told was that Joe Biden was fine. Like they
he's
there
getting
was nothing wrong
treatments.
with
It
his
came out
brain.
that he was
He's
getting
perfectly
treatments.
okay, even though in 2020, before he got the nomination, they were all questioning it, and people there was evidence of it, and people showing it. But as soon as he got the nomination, oh no, he's perfectly great. And they lied to us about that for 4 years, and I think a lot of people are realizing that it's not just lies of omission. They are lying to us. They are
Yeah,
straight up
yeah.
telling us falsehoods.
And
And that's not the
unfortunately,
only thing. So what else are they lying to us about? And it's a lot of stuff. A lot
and
of
unfortunately, the left, our people, are way behind the right on this. The right has really taken the lead on
yeah.
critical analysis,
Well,
and testing narratives, and seeing if the narratives hold water.
but
And
they a
I
lot of
really
them are
wish the left
susceptible to
would.
their own narratives that aren't really don't have
Well,
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
water.
I mean,
But
calling Kamala Harris a communist is silly.
yeah, or
It's just
any
like
Democrat,
silly.
a socialist or
Yeah,
Marxist.
silly.
It's nuts. Like they're not they're just neoliberals, neoliberal corporatists. They believe in capitalism, and they're blaming like, oh, the Marxists in California. No, they are straight up neoliberals. What's happening there is not barely
Oh,
anything to do with
we
socialism.
got to speak about
Okay.
California, because my
Oh yeah,
cousin's in California, and she sent me something. Okay, and she said that they were fine, thank God. She's in LA,
yeah.
and she
It's
said
nuts.
that, people are saying, oh, it's global warming, which is another big lie to restrict our movement and to make us pay more. and to give more redistribution to the predator class in certain
Right.
industries. So, this is all a lie. But anyway, my cousin sent me this. She said, they didn't fill the reservoirs. They cut 17 million from the fire budget. They sent
Mhm.
supplies to Ukraine. They fired firefighters for not getting
It's
the
like
jab.
it's like they're setting the stage.
They
They're laying all the kindling down, just waiting for a
they
spark to set off
didn't
the fire.
comply with brush clearing. Okay, it's
Yep.
very important to do controlled burns. They
Right.
halted prescribed burns. They let stormwater wash out to sea. So, I mean, these were the things that happened. And what she's saying is there is no water in the fire hydrant. She's in LA, and she's saying there's no water in the
Yeah.
fire hydrants.
It's it reminds you a lot of what happened in the Lahaina, but what's weird
Yes.
is like this is happening these fires are happening in the wintertime. Normally this is a summertime event. And it's happening in like it hit like the rich area, where all the areas where all the celebrities live.
Well, I don't know if it hits them, but it's damn close. I mean, they're at least
Well, I
getting
mean, there's
they're at
tons
least
of like
getting
these
the smoke.
multi-million-dollar homes going up, like
They're getting the smoke
multi-million
at
dollar
least.
homes.
Let me see.
So it's a little bit different from Lahaina.
Also, Pasta and Fiorella lived in LA.
Yeah.
And they're
Also,
saying
Matt Weinglass, who we also work with,
right.
Pasta to Go, lives out there. So, but I think he's on the other side of town.
And Pasta just posted last night. It spread to the Hollywood Hills, and Matt Weinglass is saying, our leaders have failed us. Evacuation sites for the fire, i.e., Sunset Fire, has been assigned to Pan Pacific.
Well, see, I don't think it's failure. They don't work for us. We have Quisling government. These people do not work for the people they're pretending to represent. And they are doing things that they are working for private interests and doing what they want. So the question is, okay, if you want to go down a conspiratorial route here and say these fires were no accident.
I'd like to read Pasta's statement. This is in one of the groups that I'm in, and it's really well said. This is from our fearless leader, Craig Pasta Jardula. As long as they control the hiring and firing process, which is essentially our elections, they will put their cronies and rob the people blind. This is not about climate change or the police department. This is about the elites cutting the budgets and giving out our tax dollars to phony, illegitimate companies that don't do the work while pocketing the money. Governor is in charge of all these finances.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at a problem, even though we know how much money would be to solve a problem. If the people you're giving the money to are corrupt and they don't use it to do the thing that you gave them the money for. So like they gave them, like in California, I think they gave them more than enough money to fix the homelessness problem, but none of that money went to actually fixing the homelessness problem. It just went into the pockets of all these private people. So you got all these different people who are like middlemen, and they all take a cut. And then by the time it gets to the actually helping the homeless, there's like almost nothing left.
When I worked in government, I worked in homeless housing. Basically my whole career in government was in housing. And we call these types poverty pimps.
Yeah.
And the money that was supposed to go to, support the impoverished went to these groups and went to not even the group, but really to the executive directors. And it really, they were poverty pimps.
Why are executives of nonprofits making hundreds of thousands of dollars? Like, yeah, just because you're an executive, you should probably make. I can understand like 100, 150 grand maybe.
Well, why do any
they're making
executive
like $500,000 to up to $1 million of a nonprofit? Yeah, you shouldn't have that much money to pay an executive in a nonprofit.
Well, then you also look at like corporations and the executives in corporations. They're making multiple millions, just a tremendous amount of money.
But we believe in that. You should be able to make as much money as you possibly can.
Well,
that's the American way.
Yeah, if you're making the money by shorting stockholders and by not telling them what's really going on in the company and inflating it, like what was going on with I forgot, United Healthcare, the one that the guy that was killed.
Yeah, United Healthcare.
He's
Well,
United.
they make their money by denying all the claims.
Well, they also
The
make their
9
money by
services
lying.
was
They also
for what
made their
people pay
money
for.
by dumping stock and lying
Oh, yeah.
to stockholders. I mean, they were involved in a lot of stuff that was really bad.
Which
So
is why I think it's not really a MK Ultra scenario. It was more of a hit, and he was tapped
Yeah.
to step up to do the job.
Yeah, but I think it was impossible for him to know where this guy was going to be. He had insider information.
Yeah,
There was a team. There was a team on this. It wasn't.
I agree,
It
but
wasn't one person.
it seemed more like organized crime to me than it would be.
Well, if you study organized crime and the CIA, you'll see they always work together.
That's true.
And you know, in particular, I was studying the CIA and organized crime in Italy, and the Pope, and they whacked the Pope. I mean, it's like it's just come on. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We're
going up against people who will lie, cheat, steal, and kill, and have done so often to protect their power and get whatever they want. So, and I don't think that's going to stop.
And they admit to it with
got
pride.
to get these people out of government. And I don't know what's going to.
What was that guy, the CIA guy that Trump loved, and he put in office, and he just went on this whole campaign about how they, the CIA steals, lies, and he laughs. It's he's proud of it. It's
oh yeah, Mike Pompeo said that.
Mike Pompeo.
We have classes on teaching you how to steal and lie and cheat.
Yeah,
and they do. They do. That's what they trade in. They trade in lies, and
these are psychopaths.
And
they're
rewarded for it.
Exactly. Which goes back to our word for today, which is our word for today is impunity.
Yeah, it's a good word. It's a good thing. All right. Well, I don't know if you got to get going.
Yeah, I do. Well, thank you. Thank you for chatting a little bit more. It was fun.
Yeah, it is. It's always fun. And I guess we'll do this again next week. And you got personal stuff you got to go take care of. So good luck with that. I feel for you.
And you too. I never got the story, the update, but we'll do that offline.
Oh yeah. No, everything. It's okay here.
Car's okay?
Yeah, the car's okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, good.
It wasn't as bad as it sounded, but
all right, good.
At the time I didn't know because, anyway.
No, I know. I don't know. Everything's an emergency. Who knows? All right, I'm going to go to my emergency soon. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Bye, Gloria.
Bye.
Oh, I cut her off. We are going to wrap up the show. This has been Left on Left. We recorded 2 shows today for the radio, and they will be on later this week. If you're listening to WBAI in New York, I'm CheeseSlice, and you've been watching. Well, thanks to Pasta, because he's letting us continue to use Pasta to go to do the LOL segments, even though I don't think he's coming back to do the show anymore. So we're still going to be on this channel doing Left on Left, but he will be doing his own stuff. Right now, I think he's working on getting his butt to Venezuela, and he'll be doing some reporting from there. But later today, I know Matt Weinglass is going live, and he is in LA. So you might want to watch that. I'm sure he's going to be talking a lot about these fires today, and he's got some firsthand accounts. So definitely tune into that. So thank you for watching. I'm CheeseSlice. I'm going to get out of here, and have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye. knew I forgot one thing, and I'm so sorry, DC. I wanted to talk about this, but we got distracted. DC did give a $5 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Congrats on getting the show syndicated on Pacifica Radio. Love my local Houston affiliate and 90.1 KPFT. Proud of y'all. PS MK Ultra is still going strong. Thank you so much, DC. We really appreciate that. And anybody else, you can leave super chats. You can use Super Rays on Rockfan and also Rumble Rants over on Rumble. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.